talks about this idea that these entities existed and that the gods, plural, little g's, had sex with the earth women. And, one of the ladies sends me an email after we talk about this stuff on your show saying, well, wouldn't the babies be really big and basically kill the mother? I said, absolutely. As a matter of fact, in my book, Genesis 6 Giants, I literally chronicle some of the early Spanish, I guess you'd call them monks, that went into South America, where the natives told of the story where literally God rained down lightning on a group of these giants because they were literally slaughtering the women. They would impregnate them, and then they would cut the babies out for cesarean, okay?
Jeez.
I mean, and again, this is in my book, but I think the fascinating thing is that when you talk about long walkers, most people don't understand this. We're talking about individuals, even the Native Americans, the Paiute Indians, the Shoshone spoke about these guys are big enough to pick up buffalo, okay, under their arms. I have on my website, stevequayle.com, on the Giants section, my wonderful illustration by my illustrator, Brian Snowdy. I think he's one of the most gifted men in the world. You've seen the different illustrations.
He's good.
He's really good. And Brian understands the stuff. By the way, he's just returned from Japan several months ago, and he's tracking the Japanese giants, which were called the Oni, O-N-I.
Are these all over the planet?
All over the planet. All over the planet. Every single place we've gone, and when I say that, remains. It doesn't matter if they're Alaska to Patagonia. As most people probably have heard me before on your show, we've talked about Patagonia literally means big feet. And it's fascinating. Sure enough, every time you and I do a show together, the History Channel will play something saying, well, these weren't human bones, they were dinosaur bones.
Right.
It's almost fascinating. I'm not kidding you. But what's interesting is before the disinformation, they'll try and say it's acromegaly. Acromegaly is a bone disease, like Andre the Giant, the wrestler.
How big, a 14-foot person,
right? How
big is his skull?
Well, the skulls that have been found by individuals, I'll give you a good example. Some of them measure 48 inches, 4 feet.
That's a 4-foot skull.
That's a 4-foot skull from occipital condyle to occipital condyle.
And then 10 feet of body, I guess, right?
Yeah, but what is amazing is the fact that so many of the South Sea Islanders, even up to World War II, would talk about these entities. And you remember during World War II, there were a lot of rumors about the Japanese eating American servicemen and stuff.
Yes.
Well, that really has its basis in the living live giants, because on Guadalcanal there was even a statue. And Mario, the gentleman that I've spoken of who wrote the Solomon Island Giants piece, okay, when he and I started talking, George, and at one point you were going to meet him because I was trying to arrange the meeting.
Yes, you were.
And this is a true story. I never heard from him after the explosion in Fiji, but I know he was in Fiji, and he said, look, Steve, these guys are chasing me. And I said, who's chasing you? He said, the intelligence agencies from about 3 different countries. So that really happened. But anyway, he was married to a Guadalcanalese. And everybody knows the story of Guadalcanal, the military story of it. But what they don't understand is this is also, whenever you have giants, active, what are believed giants in existence, okay, you have aliens and you have UFOs associated with it. For instance, in the Solomon Islands, there are voluminous accounts of alien and UFO sightings. Voluminous.
See, and if the proportion of a human, let's say skull to body, is like 1 to 5, okay?
Right.
And if this is a 4-foot skull, they could be 20 feet tall, Stephen.
Absolutely. And what there are, in my book, as you know, you've seen a copy of it, or it's on the website, I just show even the Romans and the different historians through history have talked about some of these individuals. And some of the reports get so large that it's really hard to embrace the idea that if you understand even how reproduction works and cellular division, you're talking about an energy level. You're talking about body temperatures, by the way, that are way up there, and you're talking about a tremendous amount of strength.
Are these beings intelligent?
Absolutely.
Okay, so they're not like animal mentality.
No, and they're not like Neanderthals that couldn't pass first grade. Okay,
right.
I mean, some of them are phenomenally intelligent, and many of them communicate. And it's interesting because the sounds that they make, you've probably heard of harmonic levitation. Bruce Cathy and others have written about that. The thing is that also on my website I show some of the giants in the Andes. The Mayans and the Incas, most people don't realize this, but the giants supposedly are able to somehow, with their nasal cavities, generate a frequency that offsets gravity that enables them to move huge stones. I'm talking huge. Mario told me, and I've talked to him in person, he said, Steve, my father-in-law told me stories of when they were gold mining in one of the areas of one of the islands are looking for gold. One of the I think it was a D6 or D7 cat, one of the blades was off of it, and one of these things came out of the cave, and he said, my father-in-law watched one of these things pick up a D8 blade. And I said, well, Mario, those things got to weigh about 2 tons at least, okay? That's a big, giant caterpillar. And say, pitch it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how far to go? He said, a couple 100 feet.
Jeez.
And Mario said his father-in-law said he just flipped it like it was nothing at all. So we're talking about strength that is just phenomenal. So that makes it easy to understand how a lot of stuff in antiquity got built. I do not believe that the pyramids were built by Hebrew slaves, okay? I believe that obviously they predate Hebrew slaves and that they were built, thousands of years, around 12,000 BC. And what I tell everybody, George, based on, again, multiple witnesses, various sources, various countries, various men who have been in them, that it's not what you see the temples above ground that tell the stories. It's what's underground. And, for instance, in the Grand Canyon, one time you and I did a show together on giants, and one of the men who is physically at the retrieval site in the Grand Canyon, one of the caves on the side of the mountain, talked about taking out the 12-foot giant Egyptian sarcophaguses and taking them to, at that point it would have been in Area 51. And he absolutely was terrified, okay? And he could tell me things that no one would know. Again, I hold back things unless they were actually there.
And did they started off as extraterrestrial beings?
Well, if you say off of the planet, the giants are a combination of extraterrestrial and terrestrial.
Exactly. And so they're still around.
They're still around. And see, that's the thing that Jesus said, that we're going to see a time when it's just as in the days of Noah, okay? And most people think, well, hey, it was a dry world and then it rained and we had a flood. People that believe that. But the point is that we're talking about a violence that was so, and I'll use the word vile, V-I-L-E, that literally God had to bind these things. Can I tell you the most fascinating thing I've learned? If you were to say, Steve, tell me the most fascinating thing you've ever heard.
Absolutely.
I have absolutely gotten a verification from two men unknown to each other. One man literally was under the streets of Rome, put there, said 4 different people praying, different parts of the world. He said he was taken to the streets of Rome, taken down into a catacomb, and saw 2 12-foot giant lizard-like creatures, almost like gargoyles, with leathery wings. And he said that he literally watched giant chains. And I said, well, how big? He said, imagine putting your arms together, and that's how, making a circle with your arms. He said, that's how big the links were. But he said, what I saw, Steve, and he said, it blew my mind. And I got to tell you something. This isn't some guy that, makes stories up. And the story he told was identical to what a 4-star general told me in dealing with the same thing, the binding of these leathery wing-like creatures. And this guy happens to be an amazing man who did a lot of praying. So the thing is that I'm not saying anybody can do that. I'm saying this guy could do it.
Can you imagine if they ever broke loose?
Exactly. Well, now let me tell you where you just hit the $1 million bonus round on that thing. For some reason, there are individuals that want to break these things loose. Even when you